We want to welcome you to the Dads on Special Assignment Dadcast. This is a podcast hosted each month by myself, Billy Dry, and Jeremy Warren, the founder and executive director of DOSA, which stands for Dads on Special Assignment, where we exist as a men's ministry dedicated to the health and well-being of dads that have a son or daughter with special needs. Now, this month, we're having a special guest, Scott L. Johnson, who's going to be the speaker at this year's DOSA conference. In years past, it's been called the Gathering, or just the get together, or just it's just a time when men can come and really just recharge and visit with other dads. But Scott's going to be sharing a little bit of his heart about why he does what he does, and also Jeremy's going to be talking a little bit about the conference as well, what you can expect. So let's jump right in. Jeremy, why don't you tell us about Scott?
I wanted to just welcome Scott Johnson today. Scott's a guy I've known for several years. He's a very gifted teacher in Scripture, and he's been a faithful part of Dads on Special Assignment from the very beginning, supports in multiple ways, and comes each year to speak at our conferences. And I've had a tremendous response from the men, even asking, even over the last couple of months, asking, "Hey, is Scott coming back this year?" And so I know they enjoy him a lot. He is very gifted, friend, and someone who I know believes in the ministry and just the desire to reach people. Scott is a true discipler, one who desires to see men engage in Scripture, understand it well, is willing to meet with them and have those conversations, not just one-on-one, but also in a large group setting. And I'm just grateful to call him friend and for his commitment to our ministry and partnering with us year after year. And so I'm happy to have him here and just share a little bit about his life, his story, his involvement, his teaching, and how that plays into our DOSA conference each year. This being our fourth annual, right, Scott? I believe this is our fourth one we've done. And so that's Scott Johnson, Scott L. Johnson.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I have to say, I'm very appreciative of that endorsement. And I need to just graciously say thank you and not much else, because it could only go downhill from there. You're very kind, and thank you very much for that. Jeremy, you'll have to tell me if I have this right. I think we connected at two places. I don't remember which was first, but I was a frequent speaker at the Anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And you came to the Anchor pretty often. This is before you were on staff with influencers for a year or so. And you and I met there several times. And we also met at something that Arthur Greeno hosted one day, I think,
Mm-hmm.
where I spoke in a room at a restaurant, maybe out in Broken Arrow someplace. And I don't remember which was first, but I remember meeting you at both of those. And I'm sure we probably went to lunch or something like that. And I can remember Frank Khalil telling me he thought you were going to leave the influencer staff. But Frank said this with a giant smile on his face. And he said, God is really doing something special in Jeremy, and he has some really neat stuff coming up. And he didn't specify what it was. And then you started DOSA. And you've graciously invited me to speak at each of these men's gatherings that you have every year, and I love doing it.
You're absolutely right, Scott. And in fact, I believe it was I think it was the back room at Charleston's.
Yep.
May have been the very first place that you and I met, and you came and did one of your talks there, and it was very impactful, and you really left an impression on me, and then yeah, continuing that relationship through Anchor and the journey.
So you've been speaking here with the men's conference. This will be the fourth year. What is it about DOSA that just kind of has your heart?
Well, I think first of all, I'm a little bit of an observer from the sidelines when it comes to the idea of special needs children. My wife and I are blessed with 4 children. We don't have a special needs child. My heart goes out to those that do, and I've learned so much from the first 3 years that I've participated. And some of the years Jeremy's had a couple speakers. I was one of a couple speakers, but Jeremy also speaks at each one of these. And hearing his story and meeting with him just one-on-one a few times and hearing a little bit more about his family really helps me to understand some things about particularly the effect on men. And special needs kids are a tremendous blessing. I think all of us know that they're a tremendous blessing in a lot of ways. And at the same time, they can represent the end of a particular dream or what a dad may have envisioned about how the child's life would go and how the dad's life would go. And it changes so many things so dramatically. And so now instead of having a man cave and golf and buddies to hang out with and that sort of thing, the men, I think, find themselves absorbed, and necessarily and legitimately so, in a way that that people without special needs kids probably can't understand. This is what I pick up from being at these conferences. And Jeremy has a real heart for men and how that affects them, and the fact that they need community with other men who understand what's going on. And so, I mean, my heart resonates with anybody that has a particular need or a particular slant on things. I speak to God has blessed me with the opportunity to speak to so many groups. Some of them, for example, now are groups of people that are in recovery from something. And I look at those groups and I just marvel at what they've been through and what they're overcoming. Some of them are just, couples or Sunday school classes or things like that. But the DOSA group certainly has a particular spot in my heart of sympathy and empathy for these men who need other men in a similar situation who understand exactly what their challenges are, what their needs are, and what their desires are, that they some of which won't be able to be fulfilled. And I think so many of those things just resonate with me. It is a special group of people, and they're giving it everything they have, and they don't have any choice, but they're doing it. And I admire them, and my heart does go out to them.
So whenever you go to the meetings and you hear these men pouring out their hearts, talking about the struggles and things like that, um, what is it that you hear is kind of the common thread?
I think one thing is it's the need of these dads, the what do I want to say? The commitment, the engagement with the kids is 24/7. There's not really a break. And the DOSA conference, or the gather, as Jeremy's called it in the past, it's a brief break where they have time to share stories, share common experiences, share encouragement, maybe most importantly. And it's really hard for them to get that most of the time. It's often hard to get babysitting. It's hard to have a date with their wives. It's hard to have some quiet time, or just to go out and, work on a car or work on a woodworking project or the stuff that guys love to do. It's just all that's just more complicated for them. And again, I don't, these, it's not like these, they're never complaining. They're never whining about this. It's not like that. It's just the reality of their lives, and they've accepted it, and they're blessed by it in many, many ways. But at the same time, there's an element missing for them of just being guys and doing guy stuff that's really hard to fit into the schedule and the logistics. And that's kind of what I see them doing. They're just able to talk about that and share common experiences.
Yeah. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the conference. In years past, what are some of the topics that you've talked about that I don't want to cover this year's, because I know that that's kind of a topic for you and Jeremy to nail down, and I don't want to I don't want to take I don't want people to come in going, oh, this is what we're talking about.
Right.
But just what are some of the things that you spoke about in years past?
I'm
Um,
I can go from memory, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm looking it up while we're talking, because I've learned I have too many groups and too many different topics that I've done over the years, and I'm better to make sure I have it right. So the first year I did one of my favorite talks, except I mean, Billy, in full disclosure, they're all my favorite talks. So there's nothing I can do about that. But one of my favorite talks, a very personal talk for me, I call the struggle for work, life, and God balance. And it's how to balance out the idea of, we all of us would agree if we were asked that God should be first, family should be second, work should be third. And yet for guys with special needs kids and without special needs kids, we feel like so much of our life seems like it's work first and then family and then God. And so that talk, which I gave 3 years ago, revolves around some golden advice a man twice my age gave me when I was probably about 32 years old. Then the next year we talked about Job's friends, because all of us need friends. And I have a unique perspective on Job's friends, and I can prove this from the book, and I do when I give this talk. Most people think Job's friends were just terrible friends, and with friends like that, who needed enemies? And the fact is that we have to separate two things about his friends. They were actually phenomenal friends. And as a matter of fact, the fact that they got so worked up with Job shows how invested they were in that relationship. Now, what they got wrong was everything else. They got completely wrong why Job was suffering. They thought he had done something terrible to bring it on to himself. They were completely wrong about that, and we can also see that from abundant evidence in the book. But that was our subject the second year, was to show how Job's friends were actually phenomenally good friends, and there's so much evidence that they were such good friends in the book. So we examined that. And then last year I talked about Jonah. And of course, I'm going to say one of my favorite subjects. Again, full disclosure, they're all my favorites. But in Jonah, we have a really interesting word choice where God sends the storm. And then the text in many translations says God provided, or the Lord provided the great fish. He provided the green leafy plant. He provided the worm, and he provided a hot east wind. And we compared that phrasing with the fact that when we talk about God's provision, it's invariably good things. So in our country, in our culture here, we would say, well, God's provision is a roof over our head and security and social order. If we need the police, they come when we call them. We have friends, we have health, we have medical care. We can drink the water that comes out of the faucet. We have abundant food. Those are the kind of things that we associate with God's provision. And of course, they're always good things. And we define good as being something that we like. At the time we receive it, it seems good to us. Well, in the book of Jonah, God sent the storm. I don't think it's a stretch to say he provided the storm. And then he provided the fish, the leafy plant, the worm, and the hot east wind. That's 5 things he provided in that book. And of those 5 things, only one was welcomed by Jonah in the moment, and that was the leafy green plant. The other 4, Jonah would not have been happy to receive in the moment. And I think there's a real lesson there for us, maybe especially in America in the 21st century, that sometimes God provides what we need to nudge us into the center of his will rather than what we might want. And sometimes God's provision, which I love doing this, guys. This is a little thing that I do. I shouldn't let this cat out of the bag, maybe, but when I'm speaking, I love to ask how many people would agree with me on something. And it's always something everyone raises their hand on. So in that talk, I say, how many of you would agree that God's provision is always good? Well, everybody raises their hand. I agree with it. God's provision is always good. But then we have to acknowledge that in the book of Jonah, his provision was good, even when the thing that he provided was upsetting or unwelcome or not seen as good by the recipient, which was Jonah. And there's a real lesson there for us that sometimes in our lives, we are receiving God's provision and we need to accept it as such, as opposed to kind of complaining or being down about it. There's a reason for it.
That's so good. That's so good. Jeremy, I mean, you can, both of us can agree with that. We look at our lives and we can look at the many blessings, right?
Billy, every one of Scott's talks are always Very powerful. As you just saw with with what he's talked on the last 3 years and just how they relate to these men and to their circumstances as a dad on special assignment. And I think that in preparation for the conference coming up this September, that is no exception based on I know what Scott and I have talked about covering for this year.
So, and Jeremy, give me kind of a rundown of what men can expect for the conference. Like, what's a day look like, and what's really I mean, I don't want to say the purpose of it, but what's really the heart behind it? Because I know that you've, like you said, this will be the fourth year. This is a big part of what DOSA does in providing this opportunity for men to get together. But what's really the heart behind it for you?
Well, Scott touched on it a little bit, and it's something we talk about a lot in DOSA, and that is the importance of community, building a brotherhood and relationship with other men and being able to do life together with others who are in the same camp and that can relate. But also really just allowing a day to nurture and encourage these men. It's really designed to be a day of refreshment, a day that they can set aside the chaos of life, come enjoy breakfast and lunch together, enjoy hearing Scott share a two-part lesson, have some breakout sessions where guys get to engage and connect at individual tables and cover table topics, and really just connect. That's a big part of what we do. But the goal, one of the big goals is for them to leave not only refreshed and encouraged in the day, but that they leave with nuggets that they can apply to their life and that ultimately will draw them closer in the relationship with Christ. And some guys who may be questioning their relationship with the Lord, questioning why this has happened to them, knowing that there's men that will attend this conference that are in all different aspects of their life, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. Guys who are uh, just physically exhausted, guys who would say that they have no spiritual relationship or spiritual walk and not even sure what that would look like. Guys who are just mentally drained in just everything that they're learning from doctors and therapists. And so the idea is that they come, they build a connection, a bond, they connect with other men, they start building that community, they're refreshed, they get to take away something from Scott's lesson that will help draw them into a right relationship with the Lord. And really, honestly, guys just like to eat, so we have food, breakfast and lunch, and that's really the purpose of the day.
I love it, Scott. Now, have you had a chance to visit with some of the men after the conference?
I chat with them at lunchtime or sometimes during a breakout session. So I've had a few chats during that day.
What's been the biggest thing that you've heard them say about kind of the feedback that they've given you about what they've learned, what they're taking, that kind of information.
I I think two things. A lot of times they're grateful for whatever the talk is that I gave. They're grateful that God spoke to them in some way, as far as the feedback I get on the talks or the things that I talk about. But I think what I really love is when I have a chance to sit at the table and not really be talking, not really be engaged with them, but just listening. And I love hearing them talking with each other about their common experience and the needs that they have and the way they find encouragement in that conversation and encouragement from Jeremy, encouragement from the other things that Jeremy does through DOSA during the year with them, and encouragement by the time that they've spent that day at the session.
And that's kind of the unique thing about as dads what we go through. And Jeremy and I've touched on this before. It's just that even though it's all you know like cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, autism, and all the different things that our kids um, deal with. the things that the dads deal with, it's all the same. It doesn't matter, the challenge. It's still the same trauma that men experience, um, and that's really what we want to kind of help provide some healing for, or even just some tools to maybe cope with better. Is that a fair statement?
Well, from my observation, I think it's very fair, and I would give you an analogy because I think what you said there, Billy, is very true. Years and years ago, my wife and I experienced a couple of miscarriages. And when you're young and married and you're around young married people, that comes up from time to time. And when we experienced it, when we shared that we had experienced it with somebody else, we could tell almost immediately if they were always sympathetic, but we could tell almost immediately if they were empathetic because they had been through it. You could just tell. And everybody was very kind and very understanding, but the ones who'd been through it really had a different level of understanding. And I think that's analogous to what happens here. I'm at the table kind of listening and observing, and my heart is warmed by these cross conversations that happen with these guys who have this shared common experience, and they understand. They Each guy at the table understands the other guys at the table, even though each of their circumstances and the needs of their kids are different. Their experience as dads has got so many commonalities with the other dads, and that's what I love listening to when I'm sitting there.
Hmm.
Now, both of you, why, Scott, you're going to have an answer for this. Jeremy, you're going to have another answer for this. Why, I'll start with Jeremy actually. Why should men attend the conference? What's the thing that men should know? Hey, when you come to this conference, you're going to get this.
Billy, for me, I think the answer to that would be that men desire to be the best that they can be. Men desire to be better. I think God created us to be hunters and gatherers. We go out and we fight for things that matter. We provide. It's what God's designed in us. And I think ultimately men should come and men should want to come because deep down they desire to be better men. Uh, they want to have a healthier marriage. I talk to men all the time. Every man wants to have a healthier marriage, right? Every man wants to have a better relationship with their kids, right? And I believe the conference is not the solution, but it is a tool. It is something that we can do together that can provide uh, resources to help them accomplish the thing that they already deep down want to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. And Scott, for you, what do you tell me? Like, if you met a dad that was going through challenges and struggles, trying to find that balance, what would you, how would you invite them to this conference, and what would you tell them?
I think that's such a good question, Billy. I think my answer would be if you are in this situation and the demands on your time and your energy as a result of it are so different than they would be otherwise. And you could say to your wife, honey, I just need a few hours to do something. And she said, go do it. You got a few hours. Fishing's not my thing, but if fishing was your thing, you could go and get recharged fishing or having some quiet time or working on woodworking. But if you come to this DOSA conference, there is something about sitting with guys in a shared experience that is uniquely yours. And I've seen this so many times, not just at DOSA, but in lots of situations where there's a shared experience. Oftentimes, it has nothing to do with the speaker. It has to do with somebody else there who says they hear you say something and they make a comment or an observation or give you a piece of perspective that just changes, it sticks, it leaves a mark in a positive way, it changes your perspective on something. And so I think if I could boil it down to one word, I think it would be uplift. I think they would find an uplift by spending 3 or 4 hours at this summit or gather, or I'm not sure, Jeremy, what your name is for it. I think the name changed this year. I always liked gather, which was your name in the past, but I think they're going to come and find themselves uplifted when they leave compared to when they walk in.
And that's important.
Yeah. And it's an uplift. It's not just because it's not just a guy like me saying, hey, it's going to be okay. I don't know whether it's going to be okay. It's a guy that knows what they're going through saying, you've got this. I had a similar experience. This is how it turned out, or I can help you with this, or let's get together for coffee next week and talk about it some more. It's that kind of guy figuratively putting his arm around that guy saying, let's walk through this.
Scott, one last question. Um, outside of the community, men with special needs or children with special needs, what do you tell somebody on the outside about why it's important to support an organization like DOSA?
Maybe that's a tough question, Billy, because it may this resonates with different people differently. Part of the reason this resonates with me, honestly, is because I know Jeremy, and I know Jeremy's heart for this. I know I haven't experienced it, but I've watched it for a few people in my life to step out in faith and start up a ministry takes a lot of guts. There's a lot of risk in it, and I'm not suggesting that it's done without God's supervision and superintending. So I'm not meaning to take God out of the equation, but even so, there's a lot of difficulty and a lot of struggle, and I suspect a lot of sleepless nights, although I've never asked Jeremy that question, that go along with leaving whatever it is you were doing and stepping out in faith to do something like this. And I've spent enough time with Jeremy that I know his heart. His heart is for those men. His heart isn't for fundraising. It's not for building an empire. It's not for, growing this thing internationally, although I wouldn't be surprised if it did, or maybe it already is and I just don't know it. His heart is for the men, and it's for this day, it'll be for the men that are in that room. And that really resonates with me. When I know somebody who's in the trenches and they're doing it for, as best I can tell, all the right reasons. They're doing it for the people that are the recipients of what the heart and the purpose is of the ministry. Those are the kind of things that resonate with me. And yeah, my wife and I have been modest supporters of DOSA for some time now because we really appreciate what Jeremy's doing.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this month's DOSA Dadcast. Again, we're a men's ministry dedicated to the health and well-being of dads that have a son or daughter with special needs. And if you would like some more information about this year's conference, you can find it on DOSA's website. That is www.dosausa.org, dosausa.org. That's www.dosausa.org. Click on the link. We'd love to see you there. And also let us know if this podcast is making a difference for you. Also, if there's anyone in your life that may need to hear the information that was on this podcast, please make sure you share that to them as well. If you haven't subscribed, please like and subscribe to the podcast as well. That only helps us get more information out to more dads and individuals who may need this information. So again, thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.